Hello, citizens of YouTube land.
Hey,
It's your president and your VP, specifically in the province of Comic Bookia today, because, of course, we've got another Spider-Man comic book to talk about. This time around, it's
Spider-Man #1.
More specifically,
it's Todd McFarlen's Spider-Man #1.
From August of 1990, a full 2 years before he leaves to form Image and to create the flagship character of Image, Spawn.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, guys, let's talk about Spider-Man #1. It, of course, is the first. It's also the first part of the very famous Torment storyline.
Yeah, I don't really know that much about Torment, but
well, right away with the opening panels here, you can tell that this is going to be a clear departure from what was more than likely at the time throughout the 80s. For the most part, it was more of a time where Spider-Man was more kid-friendly than it ever been before. So with the launch of Todd McFarlen's Spider-Man, we start to get a bit of a darker edge, including the fact that the artwork itself, check out the opening panel here, guys, or the title card panel. You could tell just by the drawing of the Spider-Man here and the way the lines and the curves and the shadows and the coloring and the penciling that this is a darker Spider-Man. This is one that's going to have more of an edge to it.
The Todd McFarlane was also the artist and the writer behind this, and so it makes a lot of sense actually, because Todd McFarlane, he's awesome. I can go on and on about Todd McFarlane because I've read some Spawn stuff and I enjoy the Spawn work, you know.
So I mean, it was also the beginning of a decade where at least it was a crazy decade for Spider-Man in general with the 90s. But, yeah, as far as this one goes, we get
Spider-Man taking care of some low-level punk in an alley, and, shown right here.
Yeah, that's basically always the same, as he's going to relay this story to Mary Jane about how he's battled, the most super-powered individuals in the world. And most of them don't ever have a chance against Spider-Man. So what makes Mr. No-Name Thug think he has a chance?
Uh-huh.
And that's a story that he relays to Mary Jane. But at the same time...
Now we get something else. It's all of a sudden we get a tone switch in which it begins. The primal beat of drums, the ritual fire pot, the praying to the spirits, the allegiance to the most unholy, magic beams to reach out until the blackness it starts to bubble. Its powers reach into the East River, summoning the evil that lurks below, beckoning to it, rise. This is a Lizard story.
Yes, it is,
and it's actually a pretty dark Lizard story.
It's more of a dark Lizard story than it previously been. Now, guys, if you know much about the Lizard, Kurt Connors, then you know that this is basically a story of
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yes, and so with this and Torment here, it seems that more of the Lizard persona or the Mr. Hyde persona, if you will, is going to be more of the forefront than ever before. And perhaps going forward in the story, there's not going to be much of the man Kurt Connors there.
Yeah. And again, we see that, the Lizard is stalking a mouse. And again, you can tell that this is going to be a darker Lizard story because it
yes, because here's the other thing about
it. It spots even bigger rats, and it's a group of criminals busting into a TV store, and they're stealing TVs, and it's stalking from the shadows. The Lizard is.
So it goes from the mouse and the rat,
and then we see, and then it switches again, a tone switch, and it actually works for this comic to Peter and Mary Jane having fun times as a couple. And I have no clue what that is.
Sometimes in the Marvel comics they did self-inserts here.
I have no clue what that is, guys.
Or they did like little comic strips in between.
Okay. It's like you go from the lizard spotting a bigger prey to Peter and Mary Jane having some fun couple times to this cartoon BS
To the very next page.
And then back to the Dark Lizard story.
Yeah. But yeah, so the whole thing basically is the rebirth, if you will, of the lizard character, because perhaps
and the lizard
the character hadn't had as much attention in the late 80s.
Yeah. And the lizard, by the way, what's the best way to describe what he does to these thugs?
Makes them sleep with the fishes permanently?
By eating them.
Yes.
That's what the lizard does. He makes them sleep with the fishes permanently by eating them. And the number one rule of comic books is that not everybody is dead.
It's kind of crazy when you think about the lizard character in its first place, because the lizard himself is more akin to perhaps maybe a humanoid crocodile or a humanoid alligator.
Yeah.
So it's not really a lizard per se, but definitely reptilian DNA.
He's able to regrow his limbs like a lizard, and that was the whole point of the experiment in the first place, was that Kirk Connors was missing his arm.
But then again,
and he injected himself with a combination of lizard DNA and some mutagen type stuff. Honestly, I don't remember how it goes, but it mutates his he regrows his arms, but then he starts mutating and starts getting scales and stuff, and he becomes a lizard and all that. It's weird, and I don't.
But then again, perhaps maybe an alligator or a crocodile are just giant lizards. I mean, or perhaps it's Komodo dragon lizard DNA. I'm not sure. Either way, you have a pretty cool story here that is juxtaposed.
And now Spider-Man, he goes swinging into the city, and he's like, it's a nice fresh day. A little warmth, a little sunshine, and some of the best darn superpowers an up-and-coming yuppie could want. And then we see the lizard again. Who makes another person sleep with the fishes by eating them.
And is also now on to bigger prey.
And now
red and blue colored prey.
He then looks up and he sees Spider-Man swinging in the city. He's like, oh yeah. And that's where the issue ends. And hopefully we can get part 2, because I want to read part 2 real soon.
Spider-Man #1, Torment #1, very solid story. Would you expect anything else if you know Todd McFarlane, guys?
I expect nothing but greatness when it comes from Todd McFarlane.
Very well-renowned comic book artist and writer over the years. So this, of course, I think, if I know my comics correctly, guys, now don't quote me on this, but you can fact check us if you want in the comments section below. But I think that behind the scenes, what had happened was Todd McFarlane had basically just finished up his run with Amazing Spider-Man, and the book sales had went because of it. So Marvel, I think, at that time was like, "Hey, Todd,
you want your very own Spider-Man run?" And he's like, "Sure." And that started gaining popularity. Todd wanted some. I think this is how it goes. But Todd wanted some more money. Marvel said no. And he said, all right, screw you guys. Went and basically quit Marvel and went with Robert Kirkman and some others and formed Image.
Which, guys, that's pretty much history repeating itself, because if you know your history, then you know that certain other, and the time frames of comic book history and the comic industry, then you know that Jack Kirby and all the rest had done something similar in the years previous. And so this is nothing new with comic book writers and artists getting frustrated. And also, I think that he wasn't allowed as much creativity as he wanted.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why.
Because again, this is a darker Spider-Man story than previous ones, and Marvel, Spider-Man is like their main like kid-focused Spider-Man stuff, and Marvel's like, hey, you gotta tone it down a little bit, Todd. And he's like, no, I'm going to do whatever I want. He's like, no, you gotta tone it down. And he's like, all right, bye then, and left.
So with that being said, though, guys, final rating, as we said before, 10 out of 10. What say you?
Also 10 out of 10.
It is definitely worth picking it up. I happen to have the green version. It's available in several different color variations. I believe that the black or the red version is actually more valuable than the one that I have, but that's neither here nor there.
I mean, we picked it up for like $7.
Yeah, so I mean, if you could probably get it for roughly $7 to $10 if you go buy it in a comic book store. And with that being said, of course, though, guys, stay tuned because we've got more Deviant coming. We've got Alice Cooper coming back to the channel. That's going to be amazing. We've got Creep Show material coming. We've got Vampirella coming. We've got a lot of different stuff, so stay tuned because it's an exciting time on the Comics channel. And with that being said, there's only one thing left to say on this, and that, of course, is
peace and love from Denny and Son. Bye.